very, very much.
Hello everyone, welcome to the show. Thank you all for coming here. So great to have you. You know, I've been getting phone calls and emails from active Jehovah's Witnesses who like my videos. Surprise. They don't all hate my videos. It's really nice, you know, because I just want Jehovah's Witnesses out there to know that even though I say silly things at times and I sound like I'm making fun of your organization, which I am, but it's all, well, it's mostly in good fun. It's mostly good-natured, okay? But of course I feel there are some massive problems as well. But at any rate, I want Jehovah's Witnesses to know that I do not hate you. I am not your enemy. I do my videos to try to help you as best as I can. I try to be there for you when you come out and all that kind of stuff. But it's always up to you, right? Some people have their reasons for staying, and I can respect that. Maybe they're staying because they just don't know how to leave, or they don't know anything else. That's all they've known their whole life. Or they're trapped for various reasons due to families or spouses and things like that. And I get that. And I feel bad for you. No, there's no doubt about that. I most certainly am not your enemy. But I do welcome you to the show. And thank you for reaching out to me. I really do appreciate it. But today's show is called JW.org is a Scam. Yes, that's a very bold statement. I realize that. Even cocky. Maybe even ballsy. No, not ballsy. I am not ballsy. But let's get cracking and find out what are my reasons for saying such a bold statement. Okay, so the first thing I want to get into is the fact that JW.org entices you with pictures of panda bears and pictures of paradise, and hoping that this will, you know, get you to want to listen to them. But it's always just around the corner. You know, it's not something that they can deliver to you, of course. It's something that's going to happen. And now, of course, that they've been saying this for over 100 years, well, it could be another 100 years away, or maybe even 1,000 years from now. You know, who knows? What bugged me, I think, the most, though, about it is not just the broken promises and the outright lies and the, you know, the misleading information, but the fact that they punished people for not going along with it. That bugs me. That really is not cool. I mean, a company would get sued for lying and for misrepresentation and for, you know, presenting something that is not true and something that they cannot deliver on. But JW.org just says, well, let's see what they have to say.
The governing body committees have said, we have found that within our organization, it changes so fast that after 3-4 years, it's out of date anyway. You can't use that data.
So as he said, they like to change. They can't even keep something for 3 years even without changing it. I mean, we had the old generation of 1914 that was not going to die, punished you if you disagreed with that, but now it overlaps. I know I say that all the time, but it's just so insane. Yeah, I mean, we have a Bible that's been around for thousands of years, but JW.org has to keep changing, clearly because it's governed by a bunch of men. But, you know, and if a paradise earth is not your cup of tea, if that's not going to entice you to join their ranks, then they employ fear tactics, like as we see in this picture here. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is that they have a systematic way of indoctrinating new members. They call it a Bible study, and this is what they'll say to you: I'd like to offer you a free home Bible study. But are they studying the Bible with you? No, what they're actually studying are their publications. In fact, they don't want to study the Bible with you at all. Look what one of their own publications says. So we have two different quotes here from two different watchtowers. If you look at the first quote there, about halfway down the quote, it says, "Thus the Bible is an organizational book and belongs to the Christian congregation as an organization, not to individuals, regardless of how sincerely they may believe that they can interpret the Bible. For this reason, the Bible cannot be properly understood without Jehovah's visible organization in mind." And then the second quote says, "They say that it is sufficient to read the Bible exclusively, either alone or in small groups at home. But strangely, through such Bible reading, they have reverted right back to the apostate doctrines that commentaries by Christendom's clergy were teaching 100 years ago. And here I thought the Bible said that all scriptures are inspired of God, and so that the man of God may be fully equipped for every good work. But not so according to J.W.org. They offer no references whatsoever when they say that the Bible is not meant for you, it's meant for a congregation, for the organization. You know, I call what they do the old bait and switcheroo method. So they offer you a Bible study, but what they're really offering is a chance for you to study their publications and learn about their policies. They'll read a paragraph and then they'll ask a question, but they don't care what you have to say as your answer. They just want you to simply regurgitate it from the paragraph. And this is simply their way of tattooing what they want you to learn on your brain so that you become fully indoctrinated with their teachings and their policies. And then they cherry pick the scriptures that fit whatever they're trying to show you. The next thing is, if you do end up coming to the Kingdom Hall as a newly interested visitor, you're going to find yourself love-bombed. Yes, everyone's going to gather around you. They're going to make you feel like you're part of something huge, that you've now suddenly and instantly got 100 new friends. But in time, when you're no longer the flavor of the month, you're going to realize that these same so-called friends now find you to be quite disposable, and they're actually quite conditional friends who would turn on you in a heartbeat if they thought you broke one of J.W.org's precious policies. It's actually really sad when you find this out, that the so-called friends you had aren't really your friends at all. Another thing to think about is that they don't talk about their crazy beliefs until it's too late and you're already baptized and already fully indoctrinated. I mean, like in their publications, they just sort of throw it around out there that, you know, they're Jehovah's organization, that Jehovah selected them. Like it's a fact. Like you're just supposed to accept, oh, okay, this is Jehovah's organization, while offering no evidence whatsoever for this. Check out this chapter from the Revelation book, which they no longer use, by the way. So this is chapter 21 from the Revelation Climax book. If you see the box there that says vision on the bottom left corner, and then it says subject, the sounding of 6 of the 7 trumpets. When you study this chapter and you realize that when you read the book of Revelation in the Bible, and it refers to these trumpets that were blasting, and then the J.W.org tries to show what those trumpet blasts meant. And their interpretation of it was that it referred to various conventions that happened in like 1922 in Cedar Point, Ohio, and things like that. And then they say the whole world took notice of it. You're like, what? Really? India and China and other countries, they took notice of this? I mean, I hardly even think that people within Cedar Point, Ohio took notice of this. Sure, they may have heard of it, but did they actually think that this referred to the trumpet blasting from the book of Revelation? That that's what it meant? I mean, when we were studying that, the book study, I thought it was insane. But that's what we were told it meant, and that's what we went with. And here's a page from that same Revelation, its Grand Climax, that handbook. See what I've highlighted there? It says, Christendom's temporary success in 1918 was sharply reversed in 1919, when the remnant of anointed ones, the John class, was restored by a spiritual resurrection. Like locusts, Christ's anointed brothers swarmed out of the abyss, ready for action. They were the modern, faithful and discreet slave, which, of course, they don't agree with anymore. Now they say it's just the governing body who's the faithful and discreet slave. Their being used in this way proved that Jehovah had utterly rejected Christendom. Pure worship was reestablished. Which is very interesting, because if you know anything about what the witnesses were teaching in 1919, you'll know that they were celebrating Christmas and they still had the cross on the front of their magazines. They weren't called Jehovah's Witnesses. They deplored disfellowshipping, calling it from that it was a pagan thing taught by Christendom. I mean, it seems very odd that Jesus would have selected an organization for its, pure worship, when in fact they were teaching a lot of so-called pagan things. So imagine bringing the Revelation Climax book up to your door as part of your presentation when you're witnessing to people. Instead of showing them the pictures of paradise, or instead of showing them the doom and gloom that, try to scare them with the fear tactics of Armageddon coming, let's read them this paragraph and see how far you'd get. They would think you're on drugs or something. They would think you're crazy. In fact, J.W. Org thinks it's crazy because they don't even publish this book anymore. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's insane. It makes no sense. And these kooky teachings are the things that they would never teach somebody at the very beginning. They only teach them much later on when they feel they've already got you. It's a case of, how's it go? Straining the flies and swallowing the camel, sorry. Straining the gnats and swallowing the camel, right? So they're willing to, once you've accepted all the other bits and pieces of the paradise and all that kind of stuff, then they can throw these camels down your throat and you don't even care anymore. You're like, oh yeah, it's the truth. So I'll accept all this nonsense as well. And then there's just other things too, like that you don't find out until much later on. Like you have to report your time. They have timesheets that the elders want to know how much time you spend in the preaching work, because apparently how much time you spend doing this is a gauge to know how strong you are spiritually. Because you can't carry a microphone within the Kingdom Hall unless you have, X amount of hours. And things like you can't get baptized unless you've had about 6 months worth of indoctrination. None of the things that you see in the book of Acts, where they have Philip the evangelizer and the Ethiopian eunuch. We don't have anything like that, where they say, hey, there's a body of water. What prevents me from getting baptized? In the Bible, nothing prevented him. So he got baptized. Ooh, sorry. Get my hand. So he got baptized. But if you're studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, you've got to pass the 120 questions or whatever it is. You've got to meet individually with 3 or 4 elders privately to go through these questions. Nothing like the Bible. Scam. The other thing is they destroy all their old publications, as I kind of mentioned with the Revelation book. So every few years, you're going to see a whole list of publications that are now obsolete because they've changed their beliefs. And none of these things apply anymore. Like this falsehood that we see here in the You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth book. You see where the arrow is pointing there. It says, which generation did Jesus mean? He meant the generation of people who were living in 1914. Those persons yet remaining of that generation are now very old. Well, actually they died. Just like this book. It's been laid to rest. These kinds of things that they foretold and that they punished people for not agreeing with all prove to be lies. One thing that they neglect to tell you is that if you do join their organization, there's a really good chance that you're going to end up losing your family, because the organization is going to push you to cut them off. This is a really sad reality, but it is the truth, and it's generally what happens. Imagine if somebody called on your door and said, hello, we're Jehovah's Witnesses, and we're trying to encourage people to look into our publications, but if you do join us, there's a really good chance that you're going to lose your family. They would never say that, right? But that is generally what happens. The organization lays the groundwork on very early within the Bible study that you have with witnesses that your family could potentially be enemies of yours. And they quote that scripture, a man's enemies will be persons of his own household. Anyone who tries to discourage you from studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses are viewed as potential enemies, and who have Satan. They allude to the fact that it's Satan who's trying to oppose you and try to stop you. And who can forget this gem from the January 15th, 2013 Watchtower, where it says there, what I highlighted, what your beloved family member needs to see is your resolute stance to put Jehovah above everything else, including the family bond. Do not look for excuses to associate with a disfellowshipped family member, for example, through email. Another reason why I believe that JW Org is a scam is because they continue to cover up child abuse. And through their policies, through their 2-witness rule, for example, they continue to shelter pedophiles. It's absolutely crazy. I don't want to go into details right now for the simple fact that I could make this an entire video and the evidence is easily out there. I have done videos on this already, And if you were to simply Google the Australian Royal Commission and Jehovah's Witnesses, you will see right off the bat a mountain of evidence of exactly what I'm talking about. And there's also actual evidence that this organization would rather pay out millions of dollars in court-ordered fines and would rather pay out millions of dollars in gag orders to try to preserve their squeaky clean image, as opposed to allowing people to see what really is going on within this organization and the heinousness that they are covering up. So I definitely invite you to look into this. If you don't already know this, I think it's very important that you know this, because this could be a tipping point. It certainly would have been a tipping point for me if I was still in the organization, to realize that this whole thing is a scam. The other thing that's really appalling that this organization does is that they forbid members from speaking to former members. It's a very odd thing. In fact, they've gotten to the point now where if you are married, let's say you've got two Jehovah's Witnesses that are married to each other. If one of them wakes up and realizes that this whole organization is a scam, their spouse is encouraged by the congregation to leave them. They call it spiritual endangerment. If you were to look back, in fact, as I was going through the Live Forever book there, I saw that they didn't really encourage that so much in that book. At least not to newly interested ones, perhaps. Maybe they always did. But again, yeah, when they're studying with people, they try to present it in a different way. But what I'm trying to say is now this is what is going on for sure. That if you are married to someone and they are expressing doubts about the organization, you will be encouraged to leave them. Whatever happened to what God has yoked together, let no man put apart. I mean, if you were buying a house and you said to the real estate agent, yeah, I have a few questions, but I'd really like to speak to the previous owner about that. And then if the real estate agent said to you, oh no, I don't want you speaking to them because they're just bitter and they're just angry. I mean, wouldn't that kind of raise a few red flags? Like, what? Really? Yeah, it does raise red flags. The fact that you are not allowed to speak to former members shows that something fishy is up. In a very sneaky and underhanded way, the organization has replaced the role of Jesus with their organization. They, the governing body, are your mediator, not Jesus. They are the faithful and discreet slave, not Jesus. They are going to heaven, not you. They can drink the wine and eat the bread, but you are warned before the memorial not to do that. In fact, you are told to show up at the memorial and not participate. You are there to watch them. I mean, they could have you just sitting there and have the emblems at the front of the Kingdom Hall and say anybody who wants to or who feels they are of the anointed can come up to the front and, drink the wine and eat the bread. But no, they don't do it that way, do they? They physically want you to put these things in your hands, and then they want you to physically reject Jesus' body, to ignore Jesus' command to eat, this means my flesh and my blood. I just find that odd, that they actually want you to actually go that extra mile to physically reject it. That is weird to me. And the line gets really blurred between what Jehovah wants and what the organization wants.
Jehovah's money. You fully trust in Jehovah, Jesus, and the faithful slave. Jehovah's money. Today, Jehovah provides direction to the slave through Jesus. Jesus, in turn, provides direction for his people through the faithful and discreet slave. We can have, therefore, full confidence in the scriptural insight, understanding, and guidance. Jehovah's money. But Jehovah and Jesus trust the imperfect slave who cares for things to the best of his ability and with the best of motives. Shouldn't we then trust the imperfect slave as well?
No. Once again, no evidence whatsoever is presented. Just the claims, the grandiose claims, that Jehovah and Jesus completely trust the faithful and discreet slave. And they have very good motives, so why shouldn't we trust them? Yeah. Doesn't every scam artist say this kind of thing to you? You should trust me. Not providing any evidence whatsoever, but you need to trust me. No, we don't. But consider these other quotes from Watchtower Publications as well. These are from 3 different watchtowers. The first one there, February 15th, 1983. To receive everlasting life in the earthly paradise, we must identify that organization and serve God as part of it. From the March 15th, 1990 watchtower. However, the governing body are appointed through the Holy Spirit under the direction of Jehovah God and Jesus Christ. Their own little trinity we see there. And then from the July 1st, 1973 watchtower, consider too the fact that Jehovah's organization alone in all the earth is directed by God's Holy Spirit or active force. Only this organization functions for Jehovah's purpose and to his praise. To it alone, God's sacred word, the Bible, is not a sealed book.
And do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using.
Yes, it is very presumptuous to say such a thing. Yet the organization keeps on saying it, as we see from the evidence I just showed you. Except, of course, when they're in a court of law and when they're forced to tell the truth. Then suddenly they say it's presumptuous to make such a claim. I mean, would a householder sign up to this organization if they had all the facts? No, because the organization is not honest in their preaching work. They don't tell it like it is. Instead, they prey upon your fears. Isn't the world a horrible place? Wouldn't you love to live in a paradise? Oh, you just lost a loved one in death? Well, you can see them again in a paradise. Oh, look, I have a solution to all your problems. It's found here in this Watchtower magazine. These are the kind of things that they say. Now, I know that people watching this might say, well, all religions then are a scam. But the JW organization is rather unique in many of the things that they teach. I mean, if you're part of another organization, you're free to marry pretty much who you want. You're free to have a career, not feel guilty about going to university to get an education to get that career. You can live your life. You don't have that bunker mentality that there's impending doom that's going to collapse all over you. You don't have to risk losing your life and be pressured on an operating table to refuse life-saving medical treatment. You're not forced to shun your family and risk losing them simply because they don't agree with the kooky beliefs that you believe in. There's so many differences from this organization to other ones and the way you're made to live your life. If you could go back in time and speak to the Russellites, the people who lived around 1914 who were following Charles Russell, and show them what the organization morphed into this multi-billion-dollar empire, all the money made on the backs of the blood, sweat, and tears of the members. What do you think that they would say? Do you think they'd say, oh, Jehovah was clearly blessing them? Is that what you think they'd say? I think they'd realize how sad it was that they gave up everything and weren't able to live their lives and preached a bunch of lies to all the people around them and were so self-sacrificing in the things that they did. And they weren't able to enjoy their life. And they gave it all up to this multi-billion-dollar organization. And when they see other organizations like Scientology and the Mormons, who are equally wealthy, all money taken from their members, I think they'd be just so disappointed to see that it all is just one big elaborate scam. And it's just so sad. And the difference between working for a company and working for a cult is that at least when you work for a company, you get paid. You get paid a salary. You generally get some kind of benefits, medical, dental benefits, life insurance, disability benefits, and so forth. You end up with a pension in the end, too. And then when you retire, you're able to live your life. But when you work for a cult, you just lose. You lose family members. You lose living your life, careers, spouses. Many people gave up having children, and now they're just old. And it's just sad to think that this is what goes on. So these are the reasons why I present to you why this organization is just a scam. But now that I've brought you down, I will just show you on a cheerier note, just a short little presentation I did It's sort of like a comedic take on the JW.org formula. So we have fear plus paradise earth equals Bible student. Fear plus guilt plus paradise earth equals an unbaptized publisher. Fear plus guilt plus Prozac plus paradise earth equals a baptized publisher. Fear plus guilt plus Prozac plus self-sacrifice plus paradise earth equals a pioneer. Fear plus guilt plus Prozac plus self-sacrifice plus a penis plus paradise earth equals an elder or ministerial servant. Fear plus guilt plus Prozac plus self-sacrifice plus a penis plus a desire to lord it over others plus paradise earth equals a circuit overseer. And finally, fear plus guilt plus Prozac plus self-sacrifice plus a penis plus a desire to lord it over others plus a God complex plus heaven equals a governing body member. Thank you. So I hope you enjoyed my little video presentation today about why I believe JW.org is a scam. Of course, that's up to you to make that same determination. But at any rate, I will sign off now. And I hope you enjoy your day, and I'll see you again another time. Thank you. Bye-bye.